You're listening to The Rich Life Revolution with me, Michelle Cooper. My mission is to empower you to step into your next level of wealthy. You'll hear all the deets, a little bit of inspiration, and real life takeaways so that you can create your own rich life revolution. Let's dig in. Today, we're going to talk about success and what success is, what it means, how we interpret it, and the stories we tell about it. One of the books that I just picked up in the airport, and I actually read this on my flight from New York to Vancouver, is called The Success Paradox: How to Surrender and Win in Business and Life, and it's by Gary C. Cooper. And I really enjoyed this book. There's a lot of really great things in here. I relate to this guy's story quite a bit. My story is not at the same capacity as his, but it's similar. And one of the things he talks about in here is his 3 principles. So they are authenticity, doing good, and doing well. And I'm going to explain what those things are because I think this is really good stuff. So he asks the question, what's most important to you? So I just want you to stop, just pause, press pause on the podcast. Just take a moment and think, what is most important to me? For some of you, that might be my business, my career, my kids, my husband, my wife, my partner, my house, my dogs, my cat, my cows, whatever it is. What's most important to you? I think there's a lot of people who would say that being successful is what's most important to them. They might call themselves or classify themselves as highly driven. And what he said, which was like one of those jaw-dropping aha moments for me, is what's most important to me now is being myself. And I think that for me is something that is most important to me now. It hasn't always been most important, but I'm at this new chapter in my life. And really being myself, living my authentic life is the most important thing to me. So that means being able to communicate and express myself authentically. It means surrounding people who value me and what I bring to the table. And it means living in my core values. That's just for me, right? So obviously understanding what your personal core values are is important. And living life the way that I want to live life, like experiencing it the way I want to experience it. And so this really kind of jumped out at me. Like I said, it's kind of an aha moment. But one of the things he talks about is what are the qualities that we embody in ourselves? And in my business, I talk about with my team, our personal brand. A lot of people will think their personal brand is just a personal brand is like, an influencer or somebody who has a business or whatever. But the fact is, we all have a personal brand, regardless of what you got going on in your life. Right? So your personal brand is how you show up in the world. It's how people see you, how they experience you. So you can have a personal brand as a wife. Maybe you're a highly attentive wife. Maybe you're a highly absent wife. You could have a personal brand as a friend. Maybe you're the friend who's always late. Maybe you're the friend who always brings a gift. Maybe you're the friend who talks over everybody. Maybe you're the friend who's extremely generous. We can have a personal brand as a boss, as a coworker, as a team member. Maybe you belong to an athletic team. You'll have a personal brand there. We carry these personal brands around with us. And really, it's important to understand that we get to decide what we want our personal brand to be. We can be like, oh, I don't really like that I'm always late. That doesn't feel good to me. So I'm going to change that. I'm going to be the person who's always early, or I'm going to be the person who's on time. We get to decide what that is. We might be like, you know what? I really love when people bring me gifts when they come visit my house. So I'm going to be the person who always brings a gift or always brings flowers. What would that feel like? You get to decide what your personal brand is. Now, the thing that happens is for all of us, every single one of us on this planet, life will squeeze us. What do I mean by that? There'll be challenges, there'll be hardships, there'll be situations that are uncomfortable. And in those situations, I call it life squeezing you, right? Or the universe squeezing you. It's like, oh, here I am in this uncomfortable situation. What comes out when life squeezes you is what's inside of you. So it's like you don't squeeze an orange and get lemon juice. You squeeze an orange and you get orange juice. So if inside of you you have bitterness and hatred and resentment, when life squeezes you, that's what's going to come out. If you have gratitude and compassion and grace, when life squeezes you, that's what's going to come out. So just like you get to decide on your personal brand, you get to decide on what happens when life squeezes you. Now, you get to decide, but you got to live, you got to roll with that, right? You got to live that. You got to walk the talk. So if you've decided that you want to be a person who's highly compassionate and has a lot of grace for people and focuses on gratitude, then you got to bring gratitude into your daily routine, into every single thing you do. You have to operate from a place of compassion, not judgment. You got to be graceful and have grace with people who may not be doing things the way you think they should be done. So we get to decide, but then we have to live what we decide. And then when life does squeeze you, as it does for all of us, that's what will come out. What do you want to come out? So in this book, he talks about a celebrity CEO who respects himself, doesn't shame his employees, lie about manufacturing practices, or profits from products that harm the planet. A government official at peace with herself doesn't vote in laws that sabotage her constituents just to pocket a bribe or get reelected. And when someone harms another person, it's a sure sign that they aren't right with themselves. These are important things because this is part of you living your richest life. It's part of you creating your rich life revolution. These things have to be authentic to you. You know, you can decide that you want to be a compassionate person, but if that is not you, you might need to do some work around that to become a compassionate person. So the second piece is around doing good. So he frames these things, right? Doing good and doing well. So doing good means that I call this business for good, but you know, it doesn't just have to be about business. Now, one of the things I want to share this little story with you because I thought this was so good. It's such a good analogy, and I've never read this before or heard this before. He talks about American architect Buckminster Fuller called the ripple effect precession. One of Bucky's favorite stories regarding precession was the story of the honeybee. Seemingly inadvertently, the honeybee goes about his business of gathering honey. Precessionally, at 90 degrees to his body and his flight path, his legs gather pollen from one flower and accidentally take this pollen to the next flower, resulting in cross-pollination. The outcome of this seemingly inadvertent accidental activity is that the bee contributes enormously to life on Earth. Of the 100 crop species that provide 90% of the world's food, over 70 are pollinated by bees. Bees intend to make honey. We intend to make money. If bees inadvertently help produce most of our food, we can enrich the lives of those we have daily interactions with if we are authentic, and that's a great side effect. We can do business, right? Like we can show up and provide a service, or we can show up and volunteer our time even. The cross-pollination effect of that act will improve our entire world. It will improve our community, our families, everything. And that's a really important piece to consider. Are we contributing to good in the world? This could be part of your rich life revolution, that you're going to contribute to good. My business is based on the foundation of the practices of businesses for good. So we donate 1% of our revenue to causes and initiatives and organizations that are important to our clients and our team members. Because we can be in business and we can do good in the world. And there's that kind of cross-pollination result that happens. You will often hear me say, money follows service and value. So as long as we are solving a problem, providing a high valued service, providing extraordinary value, the money will follow. We don't have to worry about it. It will happen. And there's evidence of this over and over and over again. So doing good leads to doing well. So in this book, he talks about doing well being the financial aspect of this. So when we're authentic, when we're doing good in the world, we will do well. It will just naturally follow. But if we're not being authentic and we're perhaps not contributing to good in the world, we could be struggling for money. Doesn't mean that if you are struggling for money, that that's the reason, but there's a good chance that if you lean into that, your financial landscape will change. So this applies to our whole life, not just business. And I want you to consider operating on these three principles: being authentic, doing good, and doing well. And don't be shy about it. Don't be shy about your desire to make money. A lot of people I talk to don't want to admit that they desire financial abundance. They kind of want to hide it in their philanthropy. Well, I'm going to create this thing and we're going to donate all this money to charity. Or I'm going to sell this thing and half of the money is going to go to charity. That's all great. Like, I love that. That's doing good in the world. You can also live your most amazing rich life, if whatever that means to you. So for you, it might mean traveling in first class or business class. For others, it might mean a great car or a nice house. For somebody else, they don't maybe care about that. They want to eat really amazing food. It is what it is for you. And that's one of the most important things. So let's consider how we can step into more authenticity with our money. What does that mean for you? How can we get more honest with ourselves about money, our relationship with money, how much money we want, what we want to do with it? And let's also consider, how can we do good? What is the good impact that we can have in the world, in our communities, in our families? And then how can we do well? How can we create even more money? How can we multiply those dollars? And if any of that makes you feel at all uncomfortable, that's the thing to look at. That's the thing to be the observer. That's the thing to be like, curiosity. It's one of the most powerful states. We can be curious. What's that about? I had a friend recently who sent me a text message. She said, okay, don't shoot me for saying this. I want to create a community space, and I'm worried that I don't want to create a community space. Am I crazy? This would be for all the rising women of the world. And I'm like, I'm curious. What's that all about? She's like, the idea? I'm like, why are you indecisive? You want to create it, but you're worried you don't want to create it. What's behind that? And she was like, oh, okay. And I was like, just be curious. Just observe your thoughts. What's going on there? What's the story you're telling yourself? So she had a whole story. I won't go into it. But she had a whole story around people engaging in communities or not, and what that meant, and all this stuff. That's just a story. Let's just observe these things, right? Let's just observe our thinking around being authentic, around doing good, around doing well, financially well. What does that mean? Does that make you feel uncomfortable at all? These are important questions to ask because they're the thing that's underneath your bank balance. They are the most important things, right? The bank balance isn't the problem. Problem's not the problem. It's what we are thinking about ourselves and about the situation that is actually the problem. So I'm going to put a link to this book in the show notes because I really enjoyed this book. I'm going to see if I can get Gary C. Cooper on my podcast here because this was a game changer to me. I had so many aha moments while reading this book. I thought it was so interesting. And he also, I'll just read this one little part to you. He talks about doing well, and he talks about like the vision of what that means, right? So a lot of people are like the 6-figure business, the 7-figure business, the 8-figure business, all this stuff, right? That's their vision. That vision got lost when I began what I call chasing. Chasing is pursuing what the world tells us success is rather than what our inner voice tells us. I became deaf to that inner voice, but I got financially rewarded for the phony success that follows. Of course, it was never enough. So it doesn't mean that money won't come to you if you're chasing success or you're being inauthentic. Money could still come, but there won't be any satisfaction there. There won't be any fulfillment there. There won't be any contentment there. If you're chasing, you're always chasing. It's never enough. And that's really based in scarcity and lack. And that's really the problem, right? It's not really the chasing energy. That's dangerous because people will call that driven. They'll call that like, I'm a highly driven person. I'm a highly achievement oriented person. I am a goal getter, whatever. And I've been there. I've been that person. And that's just a reframe because when you're chasing it, you're based in lack. There's never enough. You're chasing something you don't have. And scarcity and lack is the complete opposite energy that we need to live from because it will only breed more scarcity and lack, right? It's like the greyhound chasing the rabbit. The greyhound will just keep running after the rabbit forever because it's chasing. It's never got it. Never gets the rabbit. But when we are being authentic and we're truly living in our authenticity, we're doing good in the world and we're committed to doing well financially, then the goalposts change. The landscape that we live on changes. And it might not be the same for everybody. Well, it's definitely not the same for everybody, but it might look very different. So the other thing to remember here is that you can get caught up in other people's version of rich life. And this happened to me too. I had a client that I was spending quite a bit of time with, and she was all about the bling and the fancy designer things. And I was never about that. Like, I like nice things, but I just wasn't about those things. And I got really sucked into that and I got really caught up in that. And that is lack because I'm in comparison. I'm coveting something that the other person has. Oh my God, I could never spend $2,000 on a pair of shoes. Oh, I can't wait for the day where I can spend $2,000 on a pair of shoes. Actually, I don't give a fuck about a $2,000 pair of shoes. I could give a lot of fucks about $2,000 that's donated to buying dogs from the meat markets in Vietnam. That's what I care about. But I had to get clear on what was authentic to me. And that was part of some pretty deep soul work and asking myself why I got caught up in other people's versions of rich life. So I invite you to consider that for yourself. And I'm going to continue to work on this. We're going to continue this conversation because I think this is like actually a really, really important conversation to have. So let's keep it going.
Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you got at least one gold nugget today. Be sure to grab your copy of the Rich Life Revolution workbook to help you set the foundation for your next level of wealthy. Get it now at richliferevolution.ca, and I'll see you later.